All
Okay, I think we're live now. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Pebble, a startup podcast that is specially built around companies in deep tech and entrepreneurs who are making the news. Obviously, powered by Co-Create. Of course, I'm your host Vishal Krishna. We want student entrepreneurs to become big in this country. We want student entrepreneurs to become uh, real sustainable businesses. We talk about agri-tech today. A lot of people have called me and said, when can we do something with Omnivore? So we do have Jinesh Shah, who is from Omnivore, of course, and he's going to be telling us about all his investments. He's going to be telling us about his portfolio. He's going to be telling us about how he got into Omnivore and why he set up Omnivore with Mr. Khan. So they've invested in companies like Dehat, Fussel, Agnex, Acromeline, AquaConnect, and Stellapps. And so, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that I can say about Jinesh. He's also a good friend. Jinesh, thank you for being on this podcast. How are you?
very well, Vishal. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure having being here.
A quick note. How did you start Omnivore? You could perhaps answer that question. And then let's straight away get into the presentation. And guys, keep the questions coming because you requested Omnivore to be here and we want to answer those questions that you have. So over to you, Jinesh.
Look, 2010-11, when I was with Nexus, I was looking at the ecosystem where Nexus was investing and a lot of other VCs are investing, right? I realized that rural was something which was missing out. Nexus had done one or two investments in that space. But I thought if half of the India's population is there, and if only less than 2% or 3% of the VC capital is going there, then there is some gap, right? I always realize that every democracy evolves and solves their own problems. So I thought India will also solve its own problem. With that context, started reaching out to people in the industry, right? And happened to meet Mark, who was with Godrej Agrovet at that point of time. And we started engaging our thoughts and realized that there's a lot of similarity in what we really wanted to disrupt the way how rural agri ecosystem works out, right, in the country. And that's where we started talking. It took nearly a year for us to get comfort around each other, and then we pitched to Godrej Agrovet, who was the sponsor and the anchor for the first fund, and that's how Omnio got started with a clear thesis saying that let's invest in the young startups, new technologies, which is the potential to disrupt the Indian agriculture sector. The 12-year journey right now. First 5, 6, 7 were very, very lonely. No one was there, but hopefully, things have really worked well in the last 3, 4 years. So here we are right now.
Not many people realize that it's been 12 years actually.
Yeah, 12 years. Yeah.
And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, they've got some great companies. You should check them out. Stellapps, AquaConnect, which has recently raised money. We've got Dehat, which you all know about, and Agnex, which is another popular company too. Go check them out. I think, Jinesh, let's get started and let's see your presentation. And then let's straight away get into the audience question.
Yeah, Arjun, if you can help me with the presentation, that would be
Yeah,
useful.
Arjun, why don't you make the presentation live, please?
And guys, it's just a simple presentation which will tell you what we think as agriculture, how it's evolved and how it's going to evolve. That's our view from Omnivore. Arjun, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, this is next slide, please. Look, it's really, from Omnivore's perspective, right? We started in 2010, 11, 12, right? First 3, 4 years, we were the only sole flag bearers for the country as a whole doing agri-tech investments. We saw, things really started really well from agri-tech perspective was in 2015, 16 when we started seeing a lot of urban B2C companies, right, trying to do grocery delivery, do food delivery. Zomato, Swiggy's, Amazon started delivering food, FMCG products. And that's where started the B2C wave of it, right? And over a period of time, people realized that just a B2C focus might be too costly affairs for them. So the B2B really came into picture, right? The general VCs started talking of B2B focus, mainly around SMEs, and agri-tech happened to be one of the beneficiaries. I don't think there was an intent to focus on agri-tech on the B2B transactions, but B2B deals started happening in agri-tech, and we did quite a few B2B deals, right? I think, and sometimes in 2016 when Geo was launched, that's a watershed moment from India's agri perspective, right? Data became available at a very cheap price. It was available across the country, And because data was available and there was a demand of these smartphones, the companies started making out the low cost smart featured phones, and that really proliferated the availability of mobile phones in rural India. And that was the early days of digitization which happened around it. And then the government's India financial stack, which is a Jandan Aadhaar linked Trinity account, or what we have it. Uh, and then demonetization happened, right? So digitization started picking by the rural India. And in COVID, I mean, when it was a human crisis, this was the real moment for digitization of Indian agriculture sector, right? I mean, it really, the farmers started coming back to the ecosystem and say, how do we reach out to the end consumers? Because the existing supply chain were broken, right? And they started working with startups, and everyone started recognizing that agri-tech is becoming interesting. And we started seeing general VCs getting into picture. They started looking at deals around it. A lot of people co-invested with us, but quite a few also did direct deals. I mean, in 2012, 13, there were 50 odd agri-tech startups, right? I mean, we knew everyone by the names, right? But in less than 10 years, we have 1,000 odd agri-tech startups. We know quite a few of them, but it's not really possible for us to know everyone by the names. But it shows that the agri-tech ecosystem is now arrived, right? That's what we are saying. Can you go to the next slide, Arjun, please? And a lot of people ask us that why do we need digital interventions, right? Because agri as a perspective looks like a non-glamorous field. It's a lot of hard work in the field. People are not sure what's happening around it, the issues. We all hear horrible stories about agriculture sector, right? That rain's not there, farmers committing suicide, our production is getting wasted because of post-harvest losses, and we were not able to get right nutrition for all the country, right? So we all hear bad things, and that is precisely the reason why we need digital interventions, right, on pre-production, because we have a very small land holding. I mean, we have 130 million farmers, but an average land holding is like 2 hectares, less than 2 hectares right now. We have issues of deteriorating soil quality, especially in the state of Punjab and Haryana, where we've been using monoculture of using rice and wheat as the two crops for many years, right? Especially after the Green Revolution. And we don't have, farmers really don't have market access, right? I mean, government tried doing something decent in the farm laws, but it really got winded down because of whatever reasons that what is. We also have production issues, right? Mechanization, we don't have much. We have a lot of tractors in the field, but we don't have farm implements as real mechanization. I mean, there is a labor shortage. I mean, it's very ironical that a country with 1.3, 1.4 billion people has labor shortage in the agriculture sector, because no sons and daughters of farmers want to be in the agri sector. Even the farmers don't want their kids to come in the agri sector. And that's the reason there is issues about labor shortage, right? We also have issues about infrastructure in production, right? We don't have drip irrigation. As a result, we flood our fields, and there is a suboptimal usage of water, right? I mean, just to give you a context, around 80 to 83% of total fresh water usage of India happens in agriculture sector, and our yield is one of the lowest, right? So that's the big challenge we have it. And coming back to post production, right? We just have zero. We practically have zero infrastructure, right? And whatever we have is not really world class. And we don't have standardized quality assessment. When I go to the Western world, when I say I want to buy a particular kind of a grape, I know what I'm getting into it, right? But in Indian context, everything is very different. And that's the reason that we need to have digital interventions in all three areas. Arjun, the next slide, please. I mean, it is also critical that when we talk of digital interventions, we need to understand what context we are talking. We're talking a situation where our yield and productivity is one of the lowest in the world, right? We are not, I'm not even comparing with the world's best yields, but I'm even comparing with the world average, right? We are 30, 40% lower than the average world yields. I'm not even comparing with the best in the world. We have a very poor farm infrastructure, right? In terms of mechanization, in terms of interventions of technology. I mean, using things like IoT devices, we just have very limited, right? The biggest challenge in agri sector is absence of organized credit. It's not that absence of credit. Indian farmers don't get credit from the organized sector, so they go to money lenders. which nearly charge them 40-45% kind of interest per annum. And that is the biggest bane of Indian agriculture ecosystem. And the last is what we all know, right? Anything which cannot add value from what at the initial source, it's really doesn't make sense, right? Indian farmers really sell rice and wheat, right? We sell some fresh fruits and vegetables without doing any value addition. If I can increase the value addition, let's a simple thing like converting wheat to flour and selling it to companies which are selling flour to the people in the country, that could really add value. If I do primary and secondary processing at the farm gate, it becomes useful, but we do very limited processing as a country. Arjun, next slide, please. And we are currently facing the biggest challenge of Indian agriculture sector, the climate change. We contribute to 20% of the global GHG emissions across the world. If Indian agriculture was a separate country, we will be the seventh highest emitter of GHG gases in the world, right? And that's a big challenge, because if the climate goes for a toss, 20% of Indian farmers would not be able to really produce. They would be wiped out because of heat conditions, because of absence of clarity of seasons. I mean, you will have a shorter monsoon, but very, very intense monsoons. I'm not sure whether we are prepared as a country as a whole, right? We have 130 million farmers. We have the biggest cattle population in the world, and that is the biggest GHG emissions, which has a lot of interventions which has a lot of problems, right? We also produce things like rice, which is like consumes so much of water and emits so much of GHG emissions. It's not funny, right? And we try to export rice. That's the biggest crop we try to export. So we have got our priorities wrong, right? And what does that mean, right? We will have issues of falling yields. I mean, of the staple crop, because of heat conditions, our yield will drop down. We would, our workers who are working in the field will not be able to really work in the field, because at 45-48 degrees centigrade temperature, you really can't be on the field in the afternoons. So we will see a drop in the people who want to be in the farm laborers, right? We will have erratic monsoons, and the population would not have food security. We will have issues about access of availability. We will not be sure when we're going to get it. And we're not sure how we're really going to cope as a country. I mean, next slide, please. But I think like every democracies, we always have hope, right? We also within Omnivore believes that if we are able to use the right technology, which helps to mitigate the climate change, which helps to make our farmers more resilient, right? I'm not sure whether we can prevent the climate change, but if I can make the sector more resilient, then we will be able to solve the issues of livelihoods, issues about food security, and at the same time, we'll meet our climate commitments, right? I mean, India has made a huge commitments, and if you're not able to fulfill at a world stage, I think as a country we'll lose that reputation. So at Omnior, we believe that we need to invest into climate smart solutions, which offers clear economic value for the farmers. It means that they should be able to make money, right? It should be able to be affordable to small farmers, right? I mean, globally, a lot of innovation happens, but they all focus on farmers owning 5,000 hectares and above, right? Who wants to focus on the farmers with 2 hectares, 5 hectares? I mean, India is the only country which has the potential to solve this problem. I mean, it's probably becoming a laboratory for all smallholder farm innovations. And third, I think the technology, what we do at startups, at the private sector, at the government, needs to be accessible to farmers. I mean, digitalization is the first way of doing things, but I'm sure a lot of startups are working towards it and will make this tech available to farmers as a whole. I mean, the next slide, please. I mean, the last slide. I mean, like any VCs, I will not be able to close any presentation before I tell how we look at our entrepreneurs, right? How we look at deals. I mean, it's a simple way of looking at our potential investments. We look at 4 T's. I mean, what first is the most important is a team, right? We always want to work with entrepreneurs who are passionate about the sector, are really believe in the sector, have got the right pedigree, and have got the talent in the team to really solve these problems. The second, what is important is the TAM, which is the total addressable market. We as a VC would like to focus on companies which have large markets. I mean, sometimes a lot of entrepreneurs come with solutions saying that I can solve a specific geographical problem, but that doesn't really help me because I need my exits, right? So if I'm not able to work in few $1 billion of TAM markets, then it really doesn't help me to invest as a VC, right? It could be great as entrepreneurs, but not good as VCs. The third is the tech. Whether we are tech enabled or tech led is something which we are okay, but technology has to form an important bedrock for all investments what we do. And the last is traction. I mean, are we doing making a solution which has real need? I mean, sometimes a lot of people will try to make a solution for the needs which customers are not seeing that. I mean, so we don't want to be those kind of investments, like a 10-minute delivery of a potato at your home or tomato at home is not really what we would really worry about it. So we would look at traction with a real product market fit, and that's what we would do. I mean, that's I think what I have for the presentation, Vishal. I mean, I don't have anything beyond this on presentation, but
No, lovely,
happy to
lovely.
take questions on this.
Let's take the questions. I think there are about 14 of them,
Oh, cool.
and we'll try to wrap it up after that. Even I have questions and doubts, which obviously we'll answer. Okay, this is from Shafali. She's a student leader at the PES Engineering University, and she says two questions. Okay, from her. She says, at what stage do you invest in these startups? I mean, would you want to call it, if it's a college based startup, would you want the idea to be a little mature? That's one of the questions. She also says how, she wants to understand, everybody talks about a startup team, but in actual sense, VC is a startup team when it starts. How did you build your team, and how did it all come together, and how did you grow it over the last 12 years is that question.
Cool. Thanks very much. Yeah. Look, we really come at seed stage, pre-series A or series A kind of a deal, right? What it means is we want to be the first institutional investors. We obviously will not come into companies or startups which are just on a drawing paper. We want entrepreneurs to put their own money, get their friends and family, convince them to be part of this, and then we would come in. Like we would want to see initial traction within the own network. So it's like a skin in the game, right? So everyone needs to have a skin in the game. That's how we look around it. In terms of revenues and everything, it depends. That we have come in pre-revenue stage, you have come in early stage companies doing 5-10 crores annually. So that's not much of worry, but it's all about who has put how much, whether this entrepreneur has put his or her own money. That's very important for us. But we want to be the first institutional investor to put money. So logically, it's entrepreneurs, then your friends and family, and then angel networks, and then us, right? Uh, Regarding Omnivore, right? I mean, we took nearly 12 years to do what we are, right? I mean, Mark and I were very clear that we would like to create an institution which outlives us, right? That was initial days. It was like feel like a joke when we were saying that, but today I think it seems to be there, right? So we really hired people who were like associates. I mean, Shubhadeep and Rehem both were associates when they joined us. They have been with us for last 10 years. I mean, working with us now. They're the partners. Our CFO Imran also like was there in the second year of the fund itself, and now this is his 9th year, right? So everyone is hung around it. What we did, we shared our economics well. We paid people well. At the same time, we gave independence for people to make their own decisions, right? And both Mark and I were in the early 30s, right? We were equally like a knife when we started Omnivore. So we were okay to if people made mistakes as long as the intent are right. We give the freedom, and that's how we could create a culture around it.
Okay.
Look, startup is all about making mistakes, but making mistakes very quickly and reacting and saying, how do we move on from this?
Okay, this is from Chinmay from Bangalore University studying MBA. He says, we don't know much about your career. We didn't cover that. Were you always motivated to become a VC? What advice, apparently he's studying MBA finance, and what advice would you give someone if he or she wants to become a VC? This is from Chinmay.
Sure. I mean, look, I mean, my career was very stupid, right? I mean, I did my accountancy, spent few years doing what an accountant does it, and then did my MBA finance and realized, okay, I really don't want to be an accountant, right? So started doing things like acquiring companies on behalf of companies like HCL Technologies or Patni Computers, did IPO for Patni Computers, managed the treasuries. I mean, I just loved my job, right? And every job I left, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So every company I left, I tried to do something which didn't work. I mean, most of the times. So after Patni, I tried my own consultancy, didn't work out. After Datamatics, I tried doing something, joining a startup, didn't work out. I mean, after Nexus, I tried something and it worked out. That's Omnivore, right? So never really thought that I wanted to be a VC. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? That was my thought around it. It's because I've been in the family of entrepreneurs. I mean, no one in the family has been a non-entrepreneur, right? So wanted to be an entrepreneur, always attempted something and it worked out well, right? At some point, it just worked out. I mean, I always tell my dad did not allow me to join his business after Nexus, right? So I mean, I told my dad that you are the first father to not allow son to join his business, and I happened to start Omnivore.
What
So
business was he in, if I may ask?
well, he still is doing a great business. I mean, we manage a lot of textiles business, so textiles and and we do a temporary business for called sales outlet. We work with a lot of brands and do temporary business outlets for them throughout the country. Very
Okay. The second part of the question, otherwise who becomes how did you become a VC and how does Chinmay become a VC? Maybe Chinmay, that's your question.
It's all about what you want to do, right? I mean, VC is very glamorous from outside. People think that there's a lot of money, you take decisions, you pride because you got a lot of authorities, right? But it's not always the case, right? You just have to figure out whether you're really passionate to do it because VC pays you well. It's like a one-way street. Once you either become a VC, you can either be an entrepreneur or be a VC. You can't get any other job, right? I mean, you get stuck with a VC fund. If you are there for 5 years with any VC fund, no other VC is going to hire you. So you are going to end your career with that, right? So uh, look, it's a great job. I mean, you meet a lot of entrepreneurs, but you don't do anything, right? So even if one of my portfolio companies becomes a unicorn, they do a large things. I mean, I just am sitting on the sides, right? I'm giving nudges, I'm giving feedback, but I'm not doing myself. So that excitement is not there. But you will see a lot of new startup entrepreneurs doing it. You'll see that some are doing great jobs, some are making mistakes. At the same time, when you start raising your own fund, if you ever get a chance to raise your fund, you also start seeing a humbling experience, right? Because what questions you have been asking to your entrepreneurs, your investors will start asking you, right? And so it's painful at that time, but that's part and parcel of the job. I mean,
Great, great. Okay, this question is from BMS College of Engineering. This is a girl called Ruchi. She says, what is your when you observe entrepreneurs of 2022, people who make pitches to you now, compared to people who made pitches in 11 and 12?
I think it's a great difference, right? In 2011 and 12, someone did agri-tech, they were stupid, right?
Why you have to explain that?
I mean, it's a maverick, right? Why would anyone do agri-tech in 11, 12? There were no investors, there was no ecosystem, there was no digitization, there was no network effect. Everything was product-based solutions, right? You're fighting in the most difficult environment. There was no, I mean, even if you want to solve a Stellab started in 2012, right? To put their machines in the locations, it has every location has a challenge, right? Today, those challenges are not there. I mean, then in 2016-17, when we saw there were other batch of entrepreneurs which became coming from large corporates saying that, okay, I have spent 15 years working doing this, let me do for agri-tech. And today what we are seeing is entrepreneurs coming from other successful VC, I mean, other successful startups who have seen scale, who have seen growth, are more sophisticated, are well networked. So, I mean, that's how the ecosystem has evolved and so the entrepreneurs are evolved. I mean, today's entrepreneurs are very smart. I mean, I have a huge respect for all the entrepreneurs in three generations, but the ecosystems are very, very different.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Ruchi. There's a question from Aditya, who's from Christ College, and he says, he figures one important problem about about the presentation that you mentioned that yes, the greenhouse gas emissions are high. Your investment portfolio and thesis, right? Is it just focused on sustainability, or if you can explain if you can explain, he says, what is this kind of spread? I know you've done marketplaces. I know you've done SaaS businesses. I personally know that, but he wants to know what is your spread of the portfolio
Sure. I
when
mean,
it comes to sustainability. Is everything sustainable? I think so.
let me respond on that, right? So within the subsectors, there are six subsectors. The first, what we call it, is farmer platforms, right? Which is the farmers on a platform trying to interact with the other farmers or other stakeholders. Then there are B2B SaaS players or marketplaces where farmers can create both traders, buyers coming on the market platform. Third, what we call is post-harvest solutions, right? Saying after harvest, what happens? Can we work on creating storage, financing solutions so that the ecosystem can grow? Fourth important thing, what is there is agri-life by life sciences, right? We have started doing agri-life because we need to figure out how India will solve its own problems. That we're going to have climatic stress, abiotic stress coming in, and the same chemical usage which was allowed for many many years are getting questioned by regulators, by the importers of different countries. So we are trying to figure out what can we do in the life sciences. That's something we're doing. Other area is farm to fork food companies. I mean, we don't do branded food to a large extent, but we would prefer to play a value chain and see how we can go about it. And the sixth is the precision ag, right? Like everything and technology based, drones, IoT solutions, what can we do around it? So that's on the subsectors. Within our, how we invest is based on theory of change, right? So it's like at whatever Omnivore does, right? We are doing investment in 4 pillars of theory of change. Whatever we do should increase the profitability of the farmers. It's whether it's reduction of cost or increase of price, we don't care, but it's all about making extra money. Second is making farming more resilient, right? So what really happens is not that farming is a bad profession, but the farmers don't get consistent income. They have 2 good years, 1 bad year, so they're not able to plan what to do. Can I make it more resilient? Like a person who makes salary is able to plan his future expenses much better than a person who's doing business. Third is making agriculture more sustainable. We don't want to have 1 great year and 2 bad years. We don't want to put things in the soil or water which could harm the mother nature on a long-term basis. And fourth is pro-climate. Everything we do should be climate sustainable. It is very important because if we don't solve the problem today, in 10 years, we'll have bigger questions to answer. That's how we look around it.
Okay.
Hopefully, it
You
answers the question.
Yeah, it does answer the question. On that note, I want to add one more. You had a company that had small robots helping small landowners. Do you want to explain why that is impactful?
Sure. So this is a company called Tartan Sense, which is based out of Bangalore. It is making the world's smallest, I mean, lowest cost robot, right? What it does is looking at the small fields, right? I mean, a lot of people are flying drones in large fields, but for a person who wants to do a tomato or a cotton, and Indian fields are smaller, Indian way of doing things. So large machines really will not work around it. At the same time, Indian farmers can't really afford very, very costly machines. So you made this start and says robot, which is driven by a tractor. You can use the tractor can pull it. The machine will see and say whether there is a weed on the way or not, right? You spray a weedicide if you see it, and then do it. At the same time, there is people like who want to do organic farming and they don't want to spray anything. So you have the same thing. You see the weed and use a mechanical way of removing the weed. It is very important because today we don't have labor to spray pesticides. Drones is still a question mark how it's going to really work into Indian fields. And are we able to do a precise pointed spray on or with the help of drones is also a big question mark. We don't know the answer. So we think a company like this is going to solve a lot of problems. Our aim is to make it like a HP printer, right? We sell the machines to a service provider, but we connect with these all connected devices which work with all the pesticides provider or a nutrient provider, and say as and when there is a need to spray those specific pesticide, they will spray it. And if their stock goes down, we will directly automate the connect and say, I need more of those inputs coming to you, right? So it's very important. The farmer kids today are not in the farming because of the non-glamorous reason. If I can give a joystick to a farmer or some a robot in the field, I'm sure a lot of people who are wanting to leave farmings would want to come back. I mean,
No, fantastic answer. This is a question from Ananta Krishna, and he says, you've invested in a weather startup, and and he wants to know, in your portfolio, have you seen any direct, indirect impact of weather on companies that you worked with? And if yes, how do they work around the weather problem?
a weather problem is a huge problem, right? It's not that we can work around it. Fortunately, if you're looking at a geographic specific reason, the weather could be a big issue, right? But fortunately, a country with the size of India, even in a bad monsoon, there are few good places. Even in a great monsoon, there are few bad places. So you're able
Absolutely.
to do it because of geographical diversification. What really happens because of weather, the farmer gets information way ahead of it and they can plan it. That if the farmer knows that monsoon is going to delay it by 3 weeks, he will stop putting inputs in the field and reduce his cost, right? He might remove those produce, and when the rain is ready to come, he will do a short duration crop which will help him to make more money around it. So that is how you play around it. But weather does make a huge impact on a specific geography at a point of time.
Okay, great answer. That means Ananta, there's business for you if you're in the weather business. And this is a question from Abhilash. He says in one of your slides you mentioned team, TAM, the total addressable market, traction, and tech as some of the things that you look at when you meet an entrepreneur. In this entire circle of these four things, would you have met an entrepreneur who satisfied you on all four fronts? Uh, no? Okay. And you want to explain what works for you if would two of them have to work or the three of them have to work? Will one of them have to work? What do you bet on? And what should they keep in mind? He says, what should we keep in mind when we pitch to Jinesh? This
Look,
is a question from Abhilash.
most important thing is a team, right? We believe if there is a quality team with a B quality business plan, they will figure out something, right? If you have a B quality team with a quality business plan, it's going to fail. The team is the most important thing, right? Team doesn't mean that I am the great CEO, right? You're a combination of sales guys, a person who's able to raise capital, person who's going to work on technology, person who's going to work on business development, figure out what is agriculture, the agronomy. So it's all about a combination. That is the most critical thing, right? Because every startup in its journey will pivot. His business plan will never remain the same, right? In the last 12 years, 15 years of working with the VC world, I've never seen a genuine company having a business plan and they have met it dot to dot. The day I see that, I'll be worried because that means either he's a rock star or God, or sometimes he's just doing some kind of a fraud, right? The second important thing is are you playing are you defining your TAM clearly, right? Sometimes entrepreneurs say, I'm just going to solve a specific problem. But if I just expand the definition of the market, then you could look around the entire value and say, this is a bigger market. You need to justify and play in a larger TAM. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for you to get funding.
Very good
Look,
answer.
technology can be learned around it. Traction is all about perception. I mean, that can be word about it.
Okay. There's a question from about this is Purti, who's another student, doesn't mention where she's from, but she asked this question about how has the world of agro changed during the pandemic because supply chains got hurt. And she says, how are people aligning to global problems like this? One is because in your presentation, she says you clearly made a note on the sustainability problem, greenhouse gases, right? And now something like a pandemic can come and wipe out the supply chains. There's food shortages from both fronts. There's a question of wastage now. And there's farmer income that you mentioned, she says, which can go down cyclically. What role do startups and engineers or anybody in this industry, what works? What works? Have you seen anybody stitching supply chain, being risk free, like even a pandemic comes and hits them, doesn't hurt them? Have you seen businesses like that? Or would you see businesses being built like that going forward?
I think it's a second, right? The businesses are being built around flexibility of supply chains, right? What really happened in COVID was the existing traditional supply chain broke down completely. The markets were shut down. The farmers didn't know where to supply. The truckers were not able to do it. I mean, the Aratya's thing was, I don't want to buy it because, I mean, I don't care about it. I don't want to put my money because he also had no clarity. But what the startups say, guys, we are digitally connected to the world. We have some connect with the customers, markets. We know food has to be consumed, right? And the farmers and they went to farmers and say, guys, you have a supply problem. Can you start supplying to me? I'll pay you on time. I'll pay you for your quality, and you start working with me. So that really worked out. The startups were the guys who raise their hand and say, guys, I'm going to solve your supply chain problem. And what really happened in this journey is that customers and farmers became closer because the number of intermediaries were lesser. The customers and farmers started talking with each other. In the previous generation, right, whatever feedback customer had, it never reached to the farmers. Today, the customers and the farmers on the same platform, the feedback from the customer is seen by the farmers. The problems of farmers are being heard, understood by the customers. So that has really helped. There's an empathy on both the side. There's also a response by farmers separately, right? Some customers says, I want an A2 milk or an organic food. The farmers are saying, okay, I make organic food, I can supply to you, which never was the case, right? In previous, it was someone would give me an organic certificate, I'll go and buy that. So that is not the case. So that has really worked out. And what we are believing is that the new startups are working out business models which should give them more flexibility of working on the supply chains. They are not only focused on domestic market, they're looking at export market, they're looking at geographical diversification. They're also saying, can I create more value addition? Let's say supply chain breaks, instead of a pomegranate as a crop, can I process and make it a juice and get a better shelf life? So they're bringing changes in the business model, which gives them more flexibility around it.
So changes are happening, and you're saying that
Absolutely.
I'm glad the in a way pandemic I mean, I think it opened up a lot of farmers to think differently, which was important.
I
And
think pandemic was the best thing to happen for agri sector. While it's a human crisis, but for farming agriculture sector, this was one of the best thing to happen.
yes. And where do you think, this is my question, I mean, how many of those 120 million farm households, that's a big opportunity. How many of them are really digital today? And do you see that as a great opportunity?
Look, in terms of digital, yes. Are they on mobile phones? Are they doing some kind of a tech-based connection? Answer is maybe like 25-30% of India's farmers are digitally there. They might not be directly themselves, but they could be via the sons and daughters who are working with a
Yeah,
call center or BPO
absolutely.
center, because they can tell their father that this is available and the father can do the job. So that way, I think 25-30% of farmers are digitally there. But the great thing is that the growth of that digital is like a 15-20% annually, right? In 5 years, we'll see all the farmers digitally there. So
Great.
I don't see a reason after
Okay.
5 years we should do that.
Okay. This is Satya from PS University, and he asked a very important question. As a VC, what were some of the mistakes that you made in the 12-year journey? Like you said, the first 5, 6 years were lonely, which turned into great learning. Of course, obviously, everybody knows Omnivore now with the success of many of your portfolio companies, back-to-back rounds. What were some of these biggest mistakes? Because he believes that failures are good. I mean, in our country, failures are not celebrated, but biggest mistakes, it can be hiring, it can be bad investments. You thought founders great, but didn't work out. How do you continue to manage relationships with such people? How do you
I think,
how talk about that?
yeah, I mean, if I talk about failures, I think I have to spend the entire night talking about our failures, right? I mean, we have made more blunders than what we could really would like to do that, right? So we invested in companies where we thought there's a huge market and realized it's a tiny market. We also invested in entrepreneurs who thought they were like a startup, but we're more like SME minded, right? So that's what we have done. We sometimes think that this is a rock star entrepreneur and this is going to give us everything back, and then realize it's the biggest dud I have made in my life. And sometimes it's also give us a lot of surprises. Companies which we thought were a write-off are probably the biggest success what we have it. So we made our mistakes in both the sides, right? And sometimes things have been graceful that it worked out well for us. We accept that with a humble humility that we were not able to write every time. In terms of hiring also, right? I mean, what we realized that a lot of people would try to hire from other VC funds, and we also did that, right? But realized that people who are passionate about agriculture, it's easier for me to train them to write about term sheets and doing discussions and diligences, right? But person who is not, who's a great investor, but is not really excited about the agriculture sector, I cannot really bring the passion around in him or her, right? So when we now look to hire people, we would look to get people who are more attuned to the agriculture sector. Investment is an easy job. I think that we can learn around it.
And what about managing relationship with founders with whom you they walk off, or
I
people
think,
say
look, I think,
no?
look,
Yeah,
we are very clear, right? We do everything what is right for the entrepreneurs, right? Because an entrepreneur's success is my success. It's not individual. I can do anything around it, right? Sometimes we walk away from transactions, but we do have respect with those entrepreneurs. We tell them clearly why we are walking away, right? And sometimes we also, after doing transactions and didn't work out, we still have a huge, decent relationship with them, right? Because it's not that they did something wrong. I mean, we both are doing business. Sometimes things don't work out. It's fine, right? As long as the entrepreneur is not cheating the fund, is not trying to make money at the expense of the company what is running, we are fine. Look, businesses will have its own ups and downs. We manage relationships in a very decent manner. And sometimes people do like for us. Most of people like us, but sometimes people don't even like it because we do say no to them, right? For us to say yes is a very difficult job because we probably respond yes in 3 or 4% of total transactions. I mean,
absolutely. Jinesh, can you actually tell us the structure of the fund? Is it in Fund 3 now, or I
yeah. So
lost track? So
we have recently launched our Fund 3, which is the Omnivore Agriculture Agri-tech and a climate sustainability fund, right? Which is going to focus on doing what we've been doing, agri-tech investments, but with a clear agenda that we want to be pro-climate, right? And climate is a center is a center for the fund, right? And that's what we are doing. It's going to be like a typical VC fund raising money internationally as well as nationally.
what is the size of Fund 1, and how have you grown now?
Huh. Fund one was 260 crore rupees. The second fund, which is where we're deploying, is 675 crores. This fund we want to raise around 130 to 150 million dollars.
That's a huge fund. It's a
Yeah, I
larger
mean,
fund.
hopefully, I think agri-tech is also a very large problem, and hopefully we keep continuing to
Okay.
take a shot at that and hopefully make a dent in the agriculture poverty.
Absolutely. I have last two more questions, but one more student question. Let's take this. This is to us from MS Ramaya Engineering. He says you built something that lasted for 12 years, and you saw value only out of first 7 8 years of persistence, right? He wants to ask a two-pronged question. What would you have done if those 7 years continued to be 14 years, 12 years of loneliness? Okay, how difficult would it have been to answer to your anchor investors?
Sure.
And
I'll really respond that. I have seen my parents going through ups and downs. I've been in a business family of businessmen, right? So we have seen bad timing, good timing, great timing, shit timings. We were also on the verge of selling everything and moving out of Mumbai. So, and if my dads and uncles could do it, I mean, I will also do it, right? And I genuinely believe agriculture as a sector is where you are solving genuine problems. I'm not creating a problem for future and solving in a future date. I'm solving existing problems. So there's a huge motivation. If you talk to Mark and me, we are very clear that even if we solve 3 agriculture problems in our lifetime, we've done our bit. And
absolutely.
of course, I mean, monetary wise doesn't matter, right? You make few crore extra, a few less, doesn't matter, right? It's at the end of the day, I don't have anything to worry about it, right? So that's how I
Correct.
look at it.
Brilliant answer. I wanted to complete the second part of the question. He says, how many startups come to you and really want to build for the long run and know the fact that if they come to you, they have to be around for a long time? It can't be come and exit in 3 years or something.
Look, I mean, now a lot of respect for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Sometimes we invest and sometimes we don't invest. Look, we really tend to spend time with entrepreneurs a lot before we make the first check, right? Very exceptionally, we would invest in the first month itself. So we tend to spend 6 to 10 months, 12 months. We have spent 3 years with companies. I mean, Sashank, Dehat from Dehat, we spent like 3 years before we made the first check investment. And we knew that this guy is there, right? Ranjit, I knew for many years before I made the investment. I mean, so we really tend to spend time and we generally say no for the first 6 to 12 months, right? If you still keep on coming and asking money and being passionate, then you know that this person is there for long term. I mean, that's how we look around it.
Did
And
anybody
sometimes even if
go
it,
on?
I mean,
Go
even
on.
if Omnivore doesn't invest and the entrepreneur keeps on saying, I'm going to build it whether with or without Omnivore, we still have great respect for those guys because that's a true conviction saying, okay, let's do it. Yeah, if VCs don't support, doesn't matter.
Okay. My question is last question, and I think it's an important one. India wants to build an agri stack, like a logistics stack. The government also talks about a health stack, right? And now an agri stack is possible, I believe. But you mentioned some key points in your presentation, and I want to bring them to you. And how can should we build an ag stack trying to solve this? Is my question. Okay. You say there are falling yields for staple crops by 2030, right? Yield will decline by at least 10% or more. Okay, right? That's the kind of thing that you bring in, and then you talk about working conditions are changing, lower labor productivity, so there has to be mechanization, right? Because of changing weather conditions, also labor will struggle, and basically it also means there's global warming. You talk about erratic workflows and increased risk of flooding, again linked to global warming maybe, right? And there's an impact on the population because of shortage of food supply. That's the logistics stack. I think the ag stack, where it leaves, the logistics stack should pick up. So they should solve it from food first and then move to logistics, and not logistics first and then go there. I believe that. But what are your thoughts?
Look, I think it's a throughput business, right? I mean, I look at a farmer as a 30 requirements in his life with the external world, right? Whether it's selling his output, buying inputs, advisory, subsidy, government interaction, the Sarpanch interaction of agronomy support, right? He has 30 requirements in the outside world. And if you're not solving all the 30, his throughput is not there. You're spewing a problem from one area to other area, right? If you give him a great output but cannot give market linkage, it doesn't help. The prices will crash. You say, I'll give you great output, but the input prices are going up, it doesn't help. If I'm able to produce a lot, I'm getting high prices. If I'm not able to do supply chain management, I'll fall apart. So unless you solve the throughput 30 odd requirements of the farmers at one go, you will not solve, right? If you're not giving him financing at right price point, he will not make money. So Vishal, I don't think we should do one by one. You will have to solve a throughput problem. Like it's a throughput issue. because unless the food is produced in the right manner and it gets priced to the consumer in the right manner, and if you don't solve each and every interactions, we will not be able to solve the problem. So it's like the Jandan, Aadhaar, and mobile. If it was not three together, it would fail. Here in agriculture, it's slightly more complicated because you have more stakeholders than what you had in the financial services. And in fact, the agriculture sector needs a lot of support from financial services, the logistics, the
Yes.
supply chain, the export subsidies, the export regime, the exim banks. I mean, it's unless everything comes together, the throughput is not there. So I would not say it's either or. You need to do it together. Uh, in some cases, we'll make misses and we'll hit something, but I mean, you will have to attempt for everything. That's what I
Okay.
would.
Then where are we in this journey? Your
I think
opinion.
we look. I think we are seeing some green shoots, right? I think the farmers are now digitally savvy. They are willing to experiment to new changes. Farmers are understanding the value of direct outreach to the customers or to the buyers. They're doing that. They also are now very cautious about what they are putting in the soil, because they have started to see the problems. If I put excess chemicals in the soil, it's impacting my health, it's impacting the food export what I can do, because everything goes in soil, it comes out in some other format. So that is, we are seeing those green shoots around it. We are seeing for the first time that the banking sector wants to reach out to farmers directly. I mean, there are neo banks like DGV doing those jobs, which is really helping them out, right? So I think we are seeing the green shoots. I think dairy is a ecosystem which is becoming better. Uh, I mean, aquaculture, I mean, like we are seeing that farming is, when people talk of agri-tech, it's just not fruits, vegetables, and grains. I mean, it's now silk, cotton, everything specific around it. So I think it's there, but it's early days. Hopefully, next 5 years of sustained effort, we should be there.
No, it's been a wonderful session, but I also have to ask you two things. Uh, Ending easy question: what advice would you give to student entrepreneurs or students who want to, at some point of time, build a company and come and pitch to you? What advice would you give to young people?
So look, the I'll be a very blunt in that. A lot of students come out and see what is successful today, and they'll pitch me today. Why would I fund you when the company is already successful, right? I mean, people are trying to replicate and say, I want to do a marketplace. Why would I do that today? There are quite a few successful companies there, right? So a student needs to figure out what is the genuine problem, what is being done, which is not being addressed, and how he or she can really solve that. That is what they have to come. Don't come with a solution saying, I have seen other companies getting funded. Let me do the one more thing. So that's how I'll put it, right?
No, that's wonderfully said. And, thank you very much for being on this podcast. And thank you very much for being on Pebble. It's student driven, it's community driven. And we thank you so much for your insight. Is it okay if we shared your presentation with the students?
Absolutely. Please go ahead. Yeah, there is nothing which is not in public information.
And can they write to you on LinkedIn as a question? Can they?
I mean, write to me on an email, right? LinkedIn is the last thing. I have so many LinkedIn requests, which I'm not able to do it. You can share my email ID. I'll be able to respond to that.
Okay, lovely. And we will put his email in the description on YouTube. You can write to him. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jinesh Shah of Omnivore VC. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye, guys.
And that's a take. Bye bye.
Bye.